Commander Sarah watched through the viewport as another Earth defense cruiser exploded. The enemy warship that destroyed it shimmered like a mirage, half present in reality and half somewhere else. Missiles from the human fleet passed straight through its hull as if firing at a ghost. Energy beams scattered into different dimensions. Even nuclear warheads detonated uselessly as the alien vessel simply shifted away from normal space. The Veil Collective had appeared 3 weeks ago without warning. Their ships emerged from tiers in reality itself, massive cathedral-like vessels that every law of physics humanity understood. They made no demands, sent no warnings. They simply began dismantling human civilization one station at a time. Earth's military had thrown everything at them. Nothing worked. The alien warships existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to target. When humanity's weapons did connect, the damage healed instantly as the ships pulled undamaged versions of themselves from alternate realities. Stood on the bridge of the UNSC Defiant, her hands gripping the railing hard enough to hurt. Around her, the crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to find some weakness in the enemy's defenses. Mars' orbital stations burned in the distance. Millions of people had already died. Earth itself would be next. "Commander, the flagship is moving," her tactical officer called out. "Designating its sovereign, it's heading for the Mars defense grid." Watched the massive alien vessel glide through space. It was 5 times larger than any human warship, its hull covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Smaller escort ships flickered around it like moths around a flame, phasing in and out of reality. "All ships concentrate fire on the flagship," Admiral ordered over the fleet channel. "We have to stop it before it reaches Mars." Knew it wouldn't work. They'd tried the same tactic a dozen times, but she watched anyway as the combined firepower of Earth's remaining fleet converged on the Sovereign. For a moment, the space around the alien vessel lit up with explosions and energy discharge. Then the Sovereign simply wasn't there anymore. It had shifted dimensions, letting the attacks pass through empty space. A second later, it closer to Mars and fired a single weapon. A beam of twisted light lanced out and cut through 3 human destroyers like they were made of paper. Tactical officer Lieutenant Park slammed his fist against his console. "It's not fair, we can't even touch them." But was thinking. She'd been watching these ships for 3 weeks, studying their patterns, and she'd noticed something small but crucial. "Park, replay the last engagement. Focus on the moment the Sovereign fired its weapon." The lieutenant brought up the footage on the main screen, watched carefully. There, just for a few seconds before the alien ship fired, its shimmering outline became solid, completely present in normal space. "They have to materialize to fire," said quietly. "When they use their weapons or launch smaller craft, they can't stay phased. It's only for a few seconds, but they're vulnerable." Park looked at her with confusion. "But Commander, even if we know when they're solid, we can't damage them. Their shields regenerate too fast, and we only have seconds before they phase again." Smiled, but there was no humor in it. "We're not going to damage them from the outside. We're going to board them." The bridge went silent. Every crew member turned to stare at her. "Commander," her executive officer said carefully, "boarding an enemy vessel that can shift between dimensions would be suicide. If it phases while our people are inside." "Then they die," interrupted. "But if we do nothing, everyone dies anyway. At least this way we have a chance." She opened a channel to the Defiant's Marine contingent. "Major, report to the bridge, and bring your tactical team." Staff Sergeant arrived 5 minutes later with 3 of his squad leaders. He was a compact man with scars on his hands and a reputation for getting his Marines through impossible situations. Had served with him during the Titan Rebellion. She trusted him. "Major, I need your Marines to board that alien flagship," said without preamble. Didn't even blink. "Show me the entry points." Like that about. No questions about whether it was possible or sane, just immediate focus on the mission. She pulled up a holographic display of the Sovereign. The ship materializes for 3 to 7 seconds when it fires. That's our window. I'll take the Defiant in close, draw its fire. When it solidifies, you launch in boarding pods and punch through the hull. What about the interior? One of squad leaders asked. We have no intelligence on these ships. None, admitted. You'll be going in blind. But we know they have crews, they have systems that can be damaged, and they clearly don't expect anyone to board them. Use that surprise. Find something critical and break it. Nodded slowly. How many pods can you give me? 12. That's 144 Marines. Against a ship that size, looked at the hologram. The Sovereign was massive. Commander, that's barely enough to secure a single deck. I know, but it's all we have. Met his eyes. Can you do it? Was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that said he knew this was crazy but was going to do it anyway. We'll need demolition specialists, at least 2 quantum physicists who can identify alien tech, and every breaching charge on this ship. Done. How long do you need? Give me 30 minutes. My people train for boarding actions every day. We just never expected to board something like that. He gestured at the Sovereign. But a ship is a ship. Get us inside, we'll do the rest. Immediately began issuing orders. The Defiant's armory was opened, and every available weapon was distributed to the Marine contingent. The boarding pods, designed for ship-to-ship assault, were prepped and loaded. Doctor, the ship's chief quantum physicist, volunteered to join the boarding party despite having never fired a weapon in combat. Someone needs to identify what systems are critical, she explained when questioned her decision. I'm the only one qualified. 28 minutes later, reported his teams were ready. Took one last look at the young faces filling the boarding pods through the internal cameras. Most of them wouldn't come back. They all knew it, but not one had refused the mission. All hands, this is Commander, she announced over the ship-wide channel. We've been fighting these aliens for 3 weeks. We've lost ships, stations, friends. They think they're invincible because we can't touch them. Today, we're going to teach them different. Today, we're going inside. She cut the channel and turned to her helm officer. Take us in. Full thrust toward the Sovereign. I want its attention. The Defiant accelerated, burning hard toward the massive alien flagship. Around them, other human ships scattered, confused by its apparent suicide run. The Sovereign noticed. Its escorts moved to intercept. Steady, said calmly as weapons fire began tracking toward them. Wait for it. The Sovereign turned its main weapon toward the Defiant. Energy began building along impossible angles. Could feel reality itself twisting as the alien ship prepared to fire. Now all power to forward shields. The Defiant's engine screamed as every available joule of energy was redirected to the bow shields. The ship shuddered as the alien weapon discharged, twisting space itself into a killing beam. The shields held, barely. But more importantly, the Sovereign had fully materialized. Launch pods, go, go, go. 12 boarding pods erupted from the Defiant's launch bays. They were ugly, armored cylinders designed for one purpose, punching through enemy hulls. Each one had a shaped plasma charge on its nose and enough engine power to cross the short distance in seconds. Watched them streak toward the Sovereign. The alien ship's escorts tried to intercept, but they were too slow. The pods slammed into the flagship's hull and detonated their charges. 12 holes appeared in the impossible geometry of the alien vessel. The pod's hatches blew open and Marines poured out, weapons ready, entering the belly of a ship that shouldn't exist. The Sovereign immediately tried to phase, its outline beginning to shimmer. Could see reality stretching around it as the ship attempted to escape to another dimension. With her people still inside. Major, she transmitted on the emergency channel. The ship is trying to phase. You have maybe 2 minutes before it tears you apart. voice came back, distorted by interference. Then we better work fast. Out. Stood frozen on her bridge, watching the Sovereign writhe in space as it fought to escape. She just sent 144 people to their deaths. All she could do now was watch and hope that somehow, against all probability, the most desperate gambit in human history would actually work. On the tactical display, she could see the Sovereign's weapons fire becoming erratic. Its escorts were pulling back, confused. Something was happening inside. "Come on," whispered, "come on." The alien flagship suddenly lurched, its phase attempt failing. For a moment, it hung in space, completely solid. Then its weapons began firing wildly in all directions, hitting its own escorts. Felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Whatever and his Marines were doing inside that ship, it was working. Staff Sergeant had been in combat for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for the interior of the Sovereign. The moment his team entered through the breached hull, gravity went sideways. The corridor they emerged into curved in ways that made his eyes hurt. Walls connected at angles that shouldn't exist. Looking down the passageway, could see it twist back on itself impossibly. "Everyone stay together," he ordered his squad. "Don't trust what you see. Move by contact with walls and each other." His Marines moved in practiced formation despite the disorienting environment. They'd trained for boarding actions in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, in the dark. This was just another hostile environment to adapt to. The Vale collective crew clearly hadn't expected intruders. His team encountered the first aliens 2 corridors in, tall, elegant beings wrapped in shimmering fields of energy. They stared at the humans with what looked like shock. Didn't give them time to react. Fire. The engagement was over in seconds. The aliens' personal shields flickered and failed under sustained gunfire. They weren't warriors. They were crew members who'd never faced close-quarters combat. "Keep moving," ordered. "We need to find something critical." The ship shuddered around them. Reality itself seemed to stretch and blur. Felt his hands become translucent for a moment. The ship was trying to phase with them inside. "Double time, move." Doctor, struggling to keep up in the unfamiliar combat gear, called out from the middle of the formation. "Sergeant, the phase drive must be centralized. These ships are too large to phase uniformly without a central resonator." "Which way?" demanded. "Follow the enemy," said. "They'll run towards safe zones or evacuation points. Those will be near critical systems." Like that thinking. All teams pursuit formation. We follow the aliens wherever they go. The Marines pushed deeper into the ship. They encountered automated defenses, drones that phased partially out of reality, making them hard to hit. But people adapted. They learned to fire where the drones would be, not where they were. Sustained automatic fire eventually connected with enough solid matter to destroy them. The corridors were a nightmare. Gravity shifted without warning, pulling in multiple directions at once. Some chambers seemed to flicker between different configurations. Lost a Marine when the floor beneath him suddenly became an opening to somewhere else. The young soldier fell screaming into what looked like infinite darkness. "Keep together," said through gritted teeth. "Watch every step." They'd been fighting for 10 minutes when they encountered organized resistance. Vale collective security forces in powered armor materialized ahead of them. These were trained fighters, and their armor let them phase in and out of reality at will. The firefight was brutal. Human bullets passed through phasing armor more often than they hit. But people had plasma cutters, designed for breaching ship hulls. When a security trooper materialized to fire, the superheated plasma would catch them in the transition. "Timing," shouted. "Wait for them to solidify, then fire." It worked, but they were taking casualties. 2 Marines went down with wounds from weapons that seemed to bypass armor entirely. Corporal Reeves took a hit to the shoulder from a weapon that existed partially in another dimension. Her arm just stopped working. nerves severed by something that wasn't quite in the same reality. But the Marines pressed forward. This was what they trained for: close quarters, extreme hostility, no retreat. The enemy security forces broke and ran. "Follow them," ordered. His depleted team pursued through impossible corridors. They passed chambers that seemed to contain fragments of other universes, rooms where multiple versions of the same space existed simultaneously. Focused on the basics: follow the enemy, watch your corners, keep your people alive. Finally, they emerged into a vast spherical chamber. Reality itself seemed to fold inward toward the center, where crystalline structures the size of buildings pulsed with light that hurt to look at directly. Doctor gasped. "That's it, that's the phase drive resonator." Could see the massive array synchronized with energies that made his teeth ache. "Can we destroy it?" "Damage it enough and the ship won't be able to phase. It'll be trapped in normal space." Was already pulling out scanning equipment. "We need to hit the primary resonator chamber there." She pointed to a crystal structure at the heart of the array. "How much explosive?" asked. "All of it." Nodded and keyed his radio. "All teams converge on my position. Bring every breaching charge, every plasma grenade, every power cell you can spare." The other Marine teams fought their way to the chamber over the next few minutes. Lieutenant Park's squad arrived first, having battled through the ship's crew quarters. Corporal Reeves' team came last, carrying 2 wounded and their dead. They pooled their demolitions. It wasn't enough to destroy the array, but said it would work. They rigged everything in a pattern she designated, working fast as the ship continued trying to phase. Could feel reality slipping, his vision blurring as the vessel fought to escape. An alien materialized near the entrance to the chamber. This one was clearly an officer, its form more elaborate than the others. It didn't attack. Instead, it transmitted something through their helmet systems, a voice that sounded like wind chimes and grinding gears. "Why do you not simply die?" The question was genuine. Through the translation, could hear actual confusion. This being didn't understand what it was seeing. Looked at the alien officer, at the Marines around him, wounded and exhausted but still standing, at the massive phase drive that represented technology centuries beyond anything humans could build. "Because that's not what humans do," said simply. He triggered the charges. The explosion was enormous. The crystalline structures shattered, and the energies they contained discharged in cascading waves. Reality screamed. The Sovereign lurched, fully manifesting in normal space for the first time since the battle began. Alarms filled the air, or what passed for air in this impossible place. The ship was dying. "All teams fall back to the entry points," ordered. "Move." The Marines ran through corridors that were now falling apart. Gravity fluctuated wildly. Sections of the ship flickered between different states of existence, but they'd trained for chaos. They moved as units, covering each other, carrying their wounded, refusing to leave anyone behind. His team reached their boarding pod just as the Sovereign's crew began abandoning ship. Smaller craft were phasing away, escaping the dying flagship. The Marines piled into the pod and sealed the hatch. "Punch it," ordered their pilot. The pod's engines fired and they tore away from the alien hull. Through the small viewport, could see the Sovereign hanging in space, fully solid, venting atmosphere from dozens of breaches. Its weapons were offline. Its escorts scattered. They'd done it. 144 Marines had boarded in warship and crippled it from within. Allowed himself one moment of satisfaction before keying his radio. "Commander, this is mission accomplished. We're coming home." Commander Sarah watched the Veil collective fleet response with grim satisfaction. The Sovereign hung dead in space, and 3 more enemy warships had materialized to assess the damage. They were probably preparing to destroy their own flagship rather than let it fall into human hands. Didn't give them the chance. All ships with boarding capabilities prepare assault pods, she ordered on the fleet-wide channel. Target those 3 warships. Launch the moment they materialize to attack. Around Earth, the scattered human fleet. Every ship that could carry Marines, every vessel with boarding pods, moved into position. Admiral, initially skeptical of his plan, now embraced it fully. "You heard, Commander," the Admiral transmitted. "We're taking this fight to them. No more defensive actions. We board these ships and we take them." The 3 Vale collective warships opened fire on the Sovereign, trying to destroy it. The moment they to attack, boarding pods launched from 24 human ships. The aliens tried to phase away, but they were too slow. Pods slammed into their hulls, breaching charges detonated, and human Marines poured inside. Watch the tactical display as chaos spread through the enemy fleet. More alien ships materialized, preparing to assist. More boarding pods launched. The doctrine was spreading through the human fleet like wildfire. Inside these vessels, humans had the advantage. Lieutenant Park looked up from his station, eyes wide. "Commander, they're pulling back. All enemy vessels are retreating." Watched as the Vale collective fleet began phase shifting away, not just from the battle but from human space entirely. They were fleeing. The empire that had conquered dimensions was running from boarding parties armed with rifles and demolition charges. "Recall all boarding teams," ordered. "Get our people back." The extraction was messy. Some Marines had to fight their way back to their pods through collapsing alien vessels. Others were picked up by human shuttles after their target ships abandoned them mid-battle. But slowly, the boarding parties returned. The casualty reports came in: 47 dead, 92 wounded, and 3 enemy warships captured in addition to the crippled Sovereign. Stood on the bridge as the Defiance Marines returned. Was among the last, helping carry a wounded corporal. He looked exhausted, his armor scorched and dented, but he was alive. "Good work, Major," said quietly. Managed a tired smile. "Turns out aliens bleed just fine when you shoot them close enough. Who knew?" Over the next few weeks, human scientists swarmed the captured vessels. Doctor led the efforts to understand Vale collective technology. They couldn't replicate the phase drives, not yet, but they learned how to detect them, how to predict materialization windows, how to counter the aliens' dimensional advantages. More importantly, the word spread. The Vale Collective transmitted their defeat across channels, warning other species about humanity. The message was clear. Humans didn't fight at range with superior technology. They boarded. They entered your vessels and fought in corridors where their centuries of warfare experience mattered more than dimensional superiority. Attended the memorial service for the fallen on a cold morning at Arlington. The president herself gave the eulogy, though barely heard it. She stood with both of them in dress uniforms, both of them remembering the people who'd entered alien vessels knowing they probably wouldn't come back. "Do you think they'll return?" asked quietly. Considered the question. "Eventually. And when they do, they'll be ready for boarding parties. They'll have better internal defenses, countermeasures we haven't thought of." "Then we adapt," said. "That's what we do." Nodded. That was exactly what humans did. They adapted. They found weaknesses in impossible defenses. They turned disadvantages into advantages through sheer determination and willingness to fight on terms that terrified their enemies. 6 months later, a new fleet appeared at the edge of human space. But these weren't Vale collective ships. They were representatives from a dozen species, all of them requesting diplomatic contact. All of them having heard the same story about humans who boarded warships and won through close-quarters violence. The age of human warfare had entered a new phase, not because humanity had developed better weapons or faster ships or more advanced technology, but because they'd proven something fundamental about their species. Give them away inside, and nowhere in any dimension was truly safe from humans who understood that when you couldn't win from a distance, You got close enough to make the enemy bleed. The Sovereign itself was eventually restored and converted into a museum. Visitors could walk through the corridors where Marines had fought reality-warping aliens in close combat. They could see the chamber where Steam had crippled the phase drive with improvised explosives. But the real legacy wasn't in museums. It was in the training centers where every military in human space now practiced boarding actions. It was in the new doctrine that said technological superiority meant nothing if the enemy could get inside. It was in the reputation that spread across dimensional boundaries. Humans don't fight fair, they fight close, and they never, ever give up. Commander, promoted to Admiral, stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship. She looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, species that had never worried about boarding actions were now redesigning their vessels with internal defenses. Good, she thought, let them adapt. Humanity had been adapting to hostile environments and superior enemies for its entire existence. They were very, very good at it. And if another empire decided to test humanity's resolve, well, they'd learn the same lesson the Veil Collective had learned. When humans board your ships, the battle stops being about technology and starts being about will. And in that fight, humanity had never lost.